If you are over 45 and quietly successful, this video may disturb you. Because the question haunting you is no longer, what else can I achieve? It is, why does achievement no longer satisfy me? Your mind is not a blank slate. You are born into a pre-designed psychic architecture. We spend our lives believing we are the masters of our fate. You followed the rules. You built the career. You became reliable. And yet, something feels unfinished. What if I told you that you are following an ancient script? Carl Jung, the father of analytical psychology, discovered that the human mind is not a blank slate. Beneath your personality lies a vast hidden architecture. Jung called this the collective unconscious. We don't just inherit DNA, we inherit humanity's unfinished stories. Within this vast inner library lie the blueprints of the soul, the archetypes. These archetypes are not just ideas, they are energetic forces. They are the psychic blueprints of your character and your destiny. They direct your hand when you fight. They color your vision when you love. And they whisper to you in your dreams. If you do not name them, they will rule you, anonymously. To ignore them is to live as a guest in your own home. If you do not know these blueprints, they will direct your life from the shadows, and you will call it fate. You are not broken. You are living in a structure you never consciously designed. But every construction begins with excavation. In the soul, this is the meeting with the shadow. The shadow is everything you've rejected about yourself. It is the anger you were told to hide, the passion you were told was too much, the unlived dreams you buried to be acceptable. Ask yourself, what part of you did you silence to belong? Jung famously said that the shadow is 90% pure gold. It is your unused power. Most midlife exhaustion is not from doing too much. It is from suppressing too much. When the shadow is ignored, it becomes a monster. When it is integrated, it becomes your greatest source of creative power. Integrating the shadow is the first step of mastery. Only then can we decode the 12 rooms of your psyche. The journey of the second half of life, the blueprint of being, is the process of making the unconscious conscious. It is the transition from a persona, the mask you wear to be accepted, to the self. Some of these archetypes built your success. Others are quietly draining your life. We will examine them in 3 groups: the ego, the soul, and the self. Understanding these 12 archetypes is the transition from being a resident of the maze to becoming its architect. Prepare to meet the forces that shaped your life without your consent. This is not self-improvement. This is self-reclamation. Welcome to the construction of yourself. Jung famously said that the shadow is 90% pure gold. When you suppress it, it becomes a monster that directs your life. But when you integrate it, it becomes your greatest source of creative power. The journey of the second half of life, the blueprint of being, is the process of making the unconscious conscious. It is the transition from a persona, a mask you wear for others, to the self. In this series, we will decode the 12 primary archetypes. We have divided them into 3 distinct groups: the ego, seeking security; the soul, seeking journey; and the self, seeking order. Prepare to meet the architects of your psyche. We begin with the foundation. We begin with the ego group. We now enter the first floor of the psyche, the ego group. These 4 archetypes are your primary survival mechanisms. They are formed early in life, not to help you transform, but to keep you safe. They are the architects of your persona, the social mask that once ensured survival and acceptance. But what protects you early in life can quietly limit you later. If these pillars remain unconscious, the structure of the self will eventually buckle under the weight of adult life. First, we meet the innocent. This is the part of you that maintains an unshakable faith in life. It believes in fundamental goodness. It follows the rules, trusting that virtue will be rewarded. The innocent's light is optimism, the fuel of hope itself. But its shadow is denial, the refusal to see darkness in yourself or in the world. The architect of the ostrich effect. If you remain loyal to environments that diminish you because you hope they will change, without action, This archetype is no longer protecting you. It is not faith anymore. It is avoidance disguised as virtue. When the innocence worldview inevitably fractures, the orphan, the realist, is born. This archetype is shaped by abandonment. It understands that life is not fair and that no one is coming to rescue you. The orphan's light is resilience and grounded realism. It learns self-reliance and forms deep bonds through shared struggle rather than fantasy. But the orphan has a seductive shadow, the victim. This shadow uses real wounds to justify permanent stagnation. It says, "I can't move forward because of what happened to me." If your past has become your identity rather than your history, the orphan has hijacked your blueprint, turning legitimate pain into a lifelong prison. Then we encounter the warrior, the archetype of boundaries, focus, and achievement. The warrior is the capacity to say no, to endure effort, and to protect what truly matters. It is the architect of your will. A healthy warrior fights for a purpose higher than ego. It knows when to advance and when to stand still. Its shadow is the bully, strength without conscience. But for the intellectual, the shadow warrior often turns inward. It becomes the inner critic, a relentless voice demanding impossible standards. This is strength cannibalizing itself. A mastered blueprint requires a warrior who understands that discipline exists to serve life, not to punish it. Finally, we meet the caregiver, the archetype of nourishment, responsibility, and devotion. Its light is the capacity for selfless love and the desire to protect life itself. But its shadow is the martyr. The martyr does not give out of love. It gives to control. It creates invisible debts, so abandonment becomes impossible. The martyr does not suffer because others demand too much. It suffers because it never learned how to ask. These 4 archetypes built the foundation of your life. They created stability, identity, and belonging. But the ego does not ruin your life. It simply outlives its original purpose. Beyond security lies the next demand of the blueprint, the call of the soul. Safety is a foundation, but it is never a destination. Beyond the walls of the ego lies the realm of the soul. This is where the blueprint no longer negotiates. It demands transformation. Here, the archetypes of the soul group push you into the unknown, not to make you comfortable, but to make you real. This is where the persona cracks, and the true construction of the spirit begins. We begin with the explorer. The explorer is the architect of freedom. It is the part of you that asks, "Who am I beyond my history?" Its light is the courage to leave familiar territory, to question inherited identities, and to seek autonomy beyond approval. Its shadow is the nomad, the perpetual seeker who never arrives. The nomad mistakes motion for progress. It is the fear of commitment disguised as a spiritual search. If you are constantly changing direction to find yourself, ask this carefully. Are you exploring or avoiding being seen? Then the blueprint calls for the rebel. The rebel is the catalyst of evolution. Its task is to identify what is dead, habits, loyalties, identities, and end them. The rebel breaks outdated traditions and dysfunctional family patterns so something living can emerge. Its light is liberation with direction. But the shadow rebel is the nihilist. This shadow destroys without vision. It burns not because something new must be born, but because anger demands expression. If your life is a sequence of scorched earth decisions, your rebel is no longer freeing you. It is leaving you alone among ruins. Next, we meet the lover. Not merely romance, but the archetype of connection, beauty, and intimacy with life itself. The lover is the energy that gives color, texture, and meaning to existence. It is the architect of passion. Its shadow is the addict. When the desire for connection becomes a demand to be completed by another. This shadow does not seek intimacy. It seeks anesthesia. If your sense of aliveness collapses without a person, substance, or stimulation, the lover has lost its own center. Finally, we encounter the creator, the architect of form and legacy. The creator takes the chaos of experience and shapes it into something that outlives the moment. A body of work, a contribution, a trace. Its shadow is the perfectionist, the shadow that fears imperfection more than irrelevance. If your life is filled with preparation, but empty of creation, the perfectionist is not protecting your standards. It is protecting your fear. It builds a prison called someday, where nothing is finished and nothing is risked. These four archetypes carry you beyond security and into meaning, but transformation without integration becomes chaos. Now the blueprint demands its center. We have passed through the safety of the ego and the chaos of the soul. Now we reach the summit, the self-group. These four archetypes represent the culmination of the human journey, not perfection, but authority over one's inner world. This is where you stop being a tenant in your own life and begin acting as its conscious architect. We begin with the jester. Do not be deceived by the laughter. The jester is the most subversive archetype of the self. Its light is the ability to puncture egoic illusions. It understands that life becomes unbearable when taken too seriously. The jester's wisdom is not frivolity. It is perspective. Its shadow is the irresponsible, humor used not to reveal truth, but to escape it. If laughter has become your way of avoiding commitment, intimacy, or responsibility, the jester is no longer liberating you. It is dissolving your gravity. Next, we encounter the sage, the archetype of discernment and clarity. The sage seeks truth through observation rather than reaction. In a world addicted to opinion, the sage restores silence and precision of thought. The shadow sage is the cold intellectual, knowledge without embodiment. If insight has made you superior but not compassionate, informed but not involved, the sage has frozen into distance. Knowledge without empathy does not build wisdom, it builds isolation. Then we meet the magician, the archetype of transformation and leverage. The magician understands patterns, psychological and symbolic, and uses them to catalyze change where others see limitation. But its shadow is the manipulator. This shadow uses insight as a weapon. It plays with the blueprints of others for its own gain. Its shadow is the manipulator. Insight severed from ethics. If you use psychological understanding to control outcomes or people rather than to liberate them, transformation turns predatory. What could have been a temple becomes a trap. Finally, we arrive at the center, the sovereign, the axis of the self. The sovereign assumes total responsibility for the inner and outer kingdom of life. Its light is order that allows growth, authority that blesses rather than dominates. Its shadow is the tyrant, authority driven by fear rather than trust. If control has replaced stewardship, if rigidity has replaced presence, then sovereignty has collapsed into domination. The throne is occupied, but not by wisdom. The 12 rooms of your inner architecture are now visible. The structure stands, but insight alone does not confer mastery. We have walked through the 12 rooms of your inner architecture. You have seen the foundations of the ego, the journeys of the soul, and the mastery of the self. But insight alone is not transformation. A blueprint is not a building. Carl Jung called the final step individuation, the integration of all these forces into a single, living whole. This is the moment when the architect stops studying the drawing and begins to inhabit the structure. To be whole is not to be perfect, it is to be complete. It means knowing when to call upon the warrior and when to soften into the caregiver. It means listening to the sage without losing the laughter of the jester. Most people live their entire lives confined to 1 or 2 rooms, wondering why the rest of the house feels cold and abandoned. Your midlife is not a crisis. It is a renovation, a psychic demand to open the doors you sealed decades ago, not because they were wrong, but because they were premature. The shadow you feared is the fuel of your sovereignty. The wounds of your orphan are the foundation of your empathy. Every inner conflict is not a flaw. It is an invitation to integration. When opposing forces are reconciled, masculine and feminine, light and dark, you arrive at what Jung called the mysterium coniunctionis, the sacred marriage of the soul. This is the transition from being shaped by your conditioning to consciously shaping your life. The pen is now in your hand. The 12 rooms stand open. The question is no longer, who am I? But, who will I take responsibility for becoming? Your blueprint is alive, and the second half of your life is still unwritten. It is time to inhabit your full architecture. not to optimize yourself, but to govern yourself. If you are in the second half of life and ready to build consciously, this channel is for you. Welcome to Blueprint of Being. We are just getting started.